session of the Safety Nets Ergo Summit. We're thrilled to have you here with Carrie for Ergonomics Excellence, a blueprint for workplace well-being. My name is Dan Abatoy. I'm the director of operations at Safety Nights. If at any point in time during this week, throughout the summit, or at any other point in time you want to reach out and contact me, I'm going to toss my contact information in the chat. So feel free. My door is always open. With that being said, if you also have any other questions you would ask like Carrie throughout her presentation, also feel free to add those questions there and we'll jump in and be able to handle those at the end. So with that being said, I figure let's just get this started. Today's presenter brings over 30 years of expertise in ergonomics and injury prevention. It's safe to say she knows a thing or two about ergonomics. So having said that, I'm going to stop talking and turn the stage over to Carrie. Carrie, the stage is all yours.
Thanks, Dan. I'm excited to be able to join all of you today to talk about a blueprint for workplace well-being. If you get a chance, please go into the polls. I posted 2 questions there about have you ever created an ergonomic policy and procedure manual for a company? And what is your experience with ergonomics in practice? So if you get a chance, please go ahead and take those polls. But let's get started. So I'm Dr. Carrie Beth Scheel. I'm an occupational therapist and certified professional ergonomist. I've been doing it for, I guess, longer than 30 some years. My passion is for integrating Lean Six Sigma into my ergonomics practice, really with the goal of reducing the potential for MSDs. And I also hold a green belt in Lean Six Sigma. I really love participating in Kaizen events as part of that Lean Six Sigma process because I can see the immediate result, and so can the employees. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, the objectives for our session today is to define worker well-being as it relates to ergonomics, describe components that are important to include in an ergonomic policy and procedure manual to facilitate worker well-being, really to create that blueprint that we talk about as as our topic for today, and to encourage a culture of participation and continuous improvement as part of that blueprint. So, what is employee well-being? I think all of us might define it a little bit differently, but it um, worker well-being focuses on really creating a healthier, more productive work environment through the creation of a participatory ergonomics program. Um, I love to integrate the biopsychosocial aspects into ergonomics, which can enhance worker well-being, really by addressing the interconnected pieces of physical health, mental health, job satisfaction, productivity and efficiency, and with a goal of overall reducing absenteeism. And for me, um, really making sure that employee physically, mentally, and emotionally can do their job safely. What is participatory ergonomics? It's an approach to ergonomics that involves employees, supervisors, and other stakeholders, really in the process of identifying and addressing ergonomic issues. It's critical to include employees as part of that process from start to finish. It's collaborative problem solving. Employees who do the job have the best knowledge. Maintenance, who works in that facility, knows what can be moved or shifted. And it can be empowering to both employees and management to be able to say, hey, we can work together and make ergonomics a priority. It can lead to improved outcomes as well as that well being we've talked about. Participatory ergonomics maximizes the involvement of workers in this process based on the simple fact that that worker is an expert doing their job. It relies on actively involving workers in implementing ergonomics knowledge, procedures, and changes with the intention of improving work conditions. It's important to educate everyone to be on the same page with ergonomics so people feel like they have a say in what they're doing and how they're doing it, but they're all coming from the same perspective. Why is an ergonomics blueprint so important? If you look at the benefits of ergonomics overall in the center circle, There are multiple components that can add or contribute to that blueprint. And the benefits we see include fewer injuries, reduced worker discomfort, reduced workers' compensation costs and claims, improved productivity. Ergonomics tends to lead directly to improved productivity. Reduced absenteeism. If people are healthier, happier, um, the absenteeism for discomfort and lost time goes down. Reduced cost equates to increased profitability for the company, and then improved employee morale. If they have a say in what's going on, they're more likely to follow through with um, what process or policy has been put in place. It's critical to put a policy and procedure into writing. So you want that blueprint so everybody knows the direction you're taking. It should be a baseline for everyone to work from, endorsed by top management, and we're going to talk about that piece a little bit more. It should allow for employees to contribute from start to finish with every process. It should define goals and objectives for the ergonomic program as well as the individual projects. And it should identify program components. Are we looking at doing just ergonomic evaluation and recommendations, or is the program more holistic and includes all aspects of well-being? Should also identify who's responsible for what, which components of the policy and procedure, and then look at how you will create accountability. So these are the components that an ergonomic blueprint should include. You should be developing processes that promote continuous improvement to efficiently reduce MSDs and improve the comfort and well-being of all workers through team member involvement and full management commitment. And we'll be talking about each one of these components of the ergonomic blueprint. Provide ergonomic resources to all applicable continuous improvement engineering strategies and business plans. So we want to provide information up the chain as well as down the chain of command. Educate all employees so that they understand what MSD hazards and prevention is, so they can proactively self assess their own ergonomic risk and even make basic changes to their workstation as needed. Assess and prioritize MSD hazards and tools. How are we going to evaluate? What tools are we going to use to evaluate? Once you've identified and prioritized, identify how MSD hazard control measures will be implemented, including elimination of the hazard, engineering, or administrative controls. Evaluate the effectiveness um, of the individual ergonomic interventions, and sorry, got to find my sheet because it's cut off, and integrate employee feedback through the ergonomic process to facilitate employee well-being, continuous improvement, and overall work productivity. All right, so let's talk about step one or component one in the ergonomics blueprint. It's important to develop uh, and provide direction on how to set up and implement each aspect of the ergonomics program. Recently, I set up an ergonomic policy and procedure manual for a very large company who had subsidiary companies underneath. And while we created the blueprint for the policy and procedures, we are now working with each company to make it their own. So create one to start with, and then you can build and blend from there. It also allows for identification and implementation of specific ergonomic procedures that would be most beneficial to each company. It should be available to all employees in writing so they can see it, read it, touch it. Endorsed by top management, has to be supported from the top down, and we'll talk more about that in a second. You should also identify a champion who can guide implementation of each chosen procedure. If you're an outside consultant, it's important to have someone within the company that you can work side by side with to help guide the process. Develop employee involvement. Here's that participatory ergonomics piece. Create procedures to get employees involved in all aspects of the ergonomics program. Educate them in prompt reporting of early signs and symptoms. Identify employees who can be involved directly in with the team based on their own experience. If you're assessing a specific job, how are you going to get people involved? Post team meetings, meeting minutes, excuse me, and projects for all to see. All right, here's that management commitment and endorsement. You want visible involvement from that management team. They are able to promote and provide resources, including things like budget, as well as manpower. Help to prioritize which projects should be done. Are you basing your prioritization on production or safety? They can help assign responsibility for who's following through on which aspects of the policy and procedure. They can also help hold all accountable. Is it going to be part of individuals' job descriptions that they help facilitate ergonomics blueprint? Management commitment is critical. What drives management to want to implement ergonomics? Well, usually cost containment. That's the management's orientation is to save money. That's their job. Improve productivity. If they're involved in quality or environmental ISO standards, you want to understand what those are so that you can help make sure that they're meeting those aspects within your ergonomics program. And then what growth initiatives is management looking at for the next year or 5 years? And how can ergonomics help them meet their own goals? Some of the rationale for management is that it can impact cost reduction and enhance productivity, helps to value add. Sometimes bringing on automation and other technology can actually help add value to the process. It can shed light on quality problems and improve utilization, and it can increase labor availability, productivity, and engineering cost containment. Create an overall ergonomics policy. So you're going to start when you go to create your policy and procedure manual or your blueprint. Start by identifying why the company wants to implement an ergonomics policy. Some examples might be to provide a healthy and safe work environment for all workers, that worker well-being we've talked about, to minimize worker exposure to MSD hazards, to facilitate continuous improvement in ergonomics and productivity, or to reduce injuries, save costs, and improve efficiencies. Put the policy and procedure manual related directly to the policy in writing. You want, again, to see chapter by chapter if possible, or component by component. Actively engage employees in the creation of each one of those components, and make sure the policy and procedure manual is readily available to all workers. Post it on a bulletin board. If you're into the visual management, put it on an intranet system so people have direct access. Why have an ergonomics policy or blueprint? Well, it helps to create a work environment that integrates ergonomics to maximize employee comfort and well-being while reducing the risk of undue physical and psychological stress. If everybody knows what the expectations are related to ergonomics, it makes it that much easier to follow through with. It can facilitate a proactive approach that makes changes immediately when risks are identified, rather than reactive where you have to wait until injuries have occurred. It helps to apply ergonomic principles to the workplace to reduce the number and severity of MSDs. That ultimately should result in decreased work comp costs and claims, increase the potential for improved productivity, quality, efficiency, and employee job satisfaction. An ergonomics policy also um, can become part of and should be part of a continuous improvement process. So who's responsible for ergonomics? Well, you can see pretty much a laundry list here of anybody who exists within a company. Employees, managers, employer, ergonomics committee, if you decide to create one as part of your blueprint, maintenance, purchasing, engineering, a continuous improvement department, outside consultants, and suppliers. We're going to talk about each one of these and what a policy or what a procedure might look like related to each one. So, what are the roles and responsibilities of the employees? Well, to be actively engaged with the policy and procedures, they should report discomfort out of the ordinary, which may indicate an MSD. Fill out employee discomfort report. As you can see by this list of roles and responsibilities, it's really on the employee to accept personal responsibility for their job and what they're doing and their own bodies, and to report that information to the company. Um, you can take it a step further as part of your policy and procedure manual to have them participate in regular ergonomic training, support the ergonomics program initiatives, maybe even educate them to the point where they can perform a self evaluation of their own workstation. Managers, supervisors, and frontline leaders, uh, their responsibilities could be related to being accountable for health and safety of employees, allocating human and financial resources. Want to know what that budget is so that you understand how in depth you can create your policy and procedure. Managers, supervisors, and frontline leaders should attend ergonomics training, um, take every reasonable precaution to protect their employees. And again, what you're seeing here is that you're creating an environment for those managers, supervisors, and frontline leaders to help support the employees doing their jobs and to be safe while doing them. The employer, the roles and responsibilities we identify in our blueprints include supporting and providing guidance to comply with the policies and procedures. Again, creating and providing that financial budget. How much money is each initiative going to have? Take every reasonable precaution to protect workers, support the ergonomic structure. So you can see this is a little different from the employees and the supervisors. We really want the company and the overall management team to support that structure of whatever you decide to put into your policy and procedure. You'll also see, and I guess I've been skipping over it a bit, is to support our employee participation in things like OSHA first aid, warm up routines, stretching programs. All of those parts and pieces make your ergonomic blueprint much more um, widespread and really covers more of that biopsychosocial aspect. The ergonomics committee. Personally, when I create an ergonomic policy and procedure, I love when a company is willing to do an ergonomics committee because that puts the responsibility more within the company themselves to understand what ergonomics is and to take responsibility for evaluating and implementing ergonomic programs. And it tends to be more well integrated into the program or into within the company if you have a comprehensive committee. So some of the things we look for is to establish the intent of the committee, participate, or in some companies actually provide the ergonomic training, identify ergonomic trainers. They may screen and evaluate for basic ergonomic risks. And this could be done during work inspections, specialized ergo evaluations. They may be educated to provide more advanced ergonomic evaluations. They can help create a priority list of control measures and make sure that those are followed through with. They should also work together as a committee to identify ergonomic key performance indicators or KPIs and goals for the committee to meet on an annual basis. Track that progress and then work with management to share the outcomes on an annual or quarterly basis. Members can even act as consultants within the company to help departments perform their ergo assessments. Maintenance. I always said my best friend in any company needs to be maintenance because it's important for us to establish that relationship ongoing. We are going to be asking them to work with us on a regular basis, no matter whether you're doing it through a committee or through a consultant. But the recommendations that you're making for any type of engineering control, substitution, or elimination will usually involve maintenance so that they're going to have to help make changes to the facility, to the equipment or tools. You may even look at creating things like an equipment pre-purchase checklist or a risk assessment that can be done on any equipment that's being ordered through the facility. That can help integrate ergonomics better within the company as well. I always include somebody from maintenance on an ergonomics committee as part of my policies and procedures. Purchasing. It's critical to include purchasing. And I always share this example. So if you've heard me talk before, you may have heard me talk about this. But even things as simple as a small screw can make a difference. I had a friend who was an ergonomist who was in a company that made washing machines. And purchasing decided they could save a few cents per screw, and that adds up pretty significantly. However, that's what they didn't understand was that the screw that they purchased, the tip was not as sharp. So they started seeing shoulder and elbow injuries from workers having to use more force to put the screw through the steel in the washing machine. And they ended up having to go back and try to get rid of all those screws they had purchased. And they went back to the original supplier of the first screw, and that reduced the number of ergonomic injuries. So we include purchasing in all aspects of our ergonomics blueprints. If the company is or has an engineering continuous improvement team, I encourage you to include a policy and procedure, or at least uh, a role and responsibility identification, so that you're working with them on their continuous improvement. They can participate in the ergonomics committee, and you as an ergonomist can participate with their Lean Six Sigma initiatives. Anyone who provides parts and pieces to create what the company is producing as a supplier should be part of, especially any blueprint you create. It can help identify any ergonomic requirements when initially purchasing component parts, and it can help reduce ergonomic risk factors before products get to the line. Even things like shipping parts out, how high are parts required, or boxes or anything stacked, and are they wrapped, or are they in steel drums? Can they stack them 2 high versus 3 high? Those kind of decisions can be made, um, and they should be part of your team. All right, the next component is to provide. Um, s- so previously we were looking at developing the policy. Now we're looking at part of the policy is how are ergonomic services going to be provided? Well, we first start by looking at ergonomic resources. Create an ergonomics committee that can become the primary resource for ergonomic evaluations and risk reduction recommendations. Those resources should provide a budget for ergonomic improvements, provide training for all employees on ergonomics, provide a specialist. It doesn't have to be an outside consultant, it can be somebody internally that's trained. Um, and training should include training on the processes of continuous improvement, like Lean and Six Sigma. Provide services to reduce injuries like OSHA first aid, stretching, and wellness. Remember, this is a blueprint for worker or workplace well-being, so we want to make sure we're as holistic as possible. Provide resources for other business processes that impact ergonomics, and we've talked about those within the roles and responsibilities. So purchasing, maintenance, design, and that can be new or retrofitting as well. Establish that ergonomics committee that I've been talking about. Committee structure should include 7 to 15 people. I like less, but I also want to include the entire team in that committee as well. Length of committee participation. Are people doing 1 to 2 year terms? Are they doing 6 months? You do want some continuity so that people understand and you're not starting over every time terms end. Committee goals. Create a KPI worksheet. Somehow you need to create goals. You might use SMART goal format, but create goals for the committee on a regular basis. Set that within your policy and procedure. Meeting times. When are those going to be done? Is the committee going to determine them, or is the company going to say, well, we want you to meet monthly or quarterly? Who's going to be doing the training? Is it going to be done, the committee trained by an ergonomic consultant, or is somebody within your committee already trained? What equipment's needed to help establish that ergonomics committee? Do you need a Shadowlon force gauge? Do you need goniometers? What are the tools and equipment necessary to perform a good ergonomic assessment? And then the committee should be prepared to actually implement the ergonomics process. In the provide section, we identify the budget for ergonomics. So some of the components within that ergonomic budget should be the cost of doing ergonomic assessments, ergonomic equipment and tool requests. Are you looking at adding a piece of foam to a tool, or are you actually having to have a company come in and you're testing different tools? Training costs for the committee. Are you having a consultant come in and train? Are you having the committee evaluate? So there's less cost, external cost to the company. Are you purchasing ergonomic software? There's a lot of video evaluation tools out there that that do cost money, and do you have it in your budget to use that type of support system? Maintenance and equipment upgrades. Are you looking at upgrading equipment over time? Are you accounting for preventive maintenance to reduce injuries? And then what about wellness programs? Do you have enough money within your ergonomics budget that you can address the overall well-being of that worker as part of your ergonomic blueprint? One of the wellness components that you could look at would be on-site early intervention for MSDs under OSHA first aid. Make sure you create a procedure for who will be referred to an on-site program. Are you doing OSHA first aid? If so, what will that look like? What kind of space do you need? Will only work related injuries be treated, or will work and non work related injuries be treated by the therapist on site? And then what components would be included? Are you doing OSHA first aid? Are you doing job coaching? Are you doing wellness? Um, are you doing things like stress management or smoking cessation? OSHA first aid would include having an injury prevention specialist on site. Again, create a procedure so you know what are the goals, what are the services that will be included. All of these services listed are within OSHA first aid. If you're going to exceed that and do non-work related injuries, how much care can you provide? Are you creating a stretching policy? Are employees going to be performing a stretching program? Who's going to set up that program? Will the stretching program be taught to new employees at orientation? Will supervisors be trained by maybe the on-site therapist or the ergonomist as to what are the stretches? How do you perform the stretches? Okay. When will the employees do the stretching exercises? When does the program need updated? Are you going to look at that annually? Are there different stretches for different departments? So, stretching policy really needs, or procedure needs to be comprehensive. Job coaching might be another service that could be provided to focus on worker well-being. An injury prevention specialist basically comes in to observe employees while they're doing their job, and they make recommendations for safer work methods and ergonomic risk reduction ideas. And how is that going to fit within your ergonomics policy and procedure? You may provide a purchasing policy or procedure to incorporate ergonomics into the purchasing process. For instance, you might create a purchasing policy to incorporate ergonomics by saying the company is committed to their employees' health and wellness. Purchasing products and services can have the potential to affect the health, safety, and well being of employees. And the policy is intended to establish an efficient, cost effective, consistent work um, policy for identifying, addressing ergonomic risk factors. It could assist in meeting their operational goals, maintain compliance, sustain efficiency and productivity. So Why would we get in purchasing involved? Well, just for the example I used earlier, we want to make sure that as people are purchasing items, they understand how that item itself may impact the worker's well-being. Tools to help determine ergonomic risk when purchasing items. You may look at putting an equipment ergonomic risk assessment tool in place for people to assess before they purchase, and an equipment pre-purchase checklist. Some companies take it a step further and go beyond injury reduction and look at design as part of the process. And as part of that, an example policy might be that ergonomic principles during stage design planning process for new products, manufacturing processes, equipment, furniture, and buildings, as well as larger retrofit um, operations during their redesign process. Um, so we're looking at them applying those principles. And ergonomic committee members might be assigned or volunteer to participate in it. This is a 6-step um, stage design process. And what we've done with one of our companies, they use the Plan Do Check Act as part of their lean processing. And we created this questionnaire when we're doing ergonomic design, or they're doing design, so we can incorporate the ergonomics within their design process. Education is critical as part of ergonomics, any ergonomics policy. What we see is that it can enhance the ability of the managers, supervisors, and employees to recognize work-related ergonomic hazards and risks. And I think it's important to include all all employees in this from top to bottom or bottom up. Um, Including in your training should be ergonomics. What is it? Ergonomic risk factors, ergonomic control strategies, and really identifying when training will be provided. Are you going to do it at orientation, when they assume a new job assignment because maybe their ergonomics change from one job to another? When new jobs, tasks, tools, and equipment or other processes are introduced, if high exposure levels are identified, annual training, initial training of the committee, and initial training of management and supervisors. Some training activities don't necessarily have to be truly formalized or sit down lecture type like we're doing today. Rather, it might be things like a basic training course or a toolbox talk or monthly tips. These are just some samples of things that OcuCare Injury Prevention does with the companies that we work. We also create policies or procedures to evaluate a company's data for MSDs. This is typically done before. So when employees report discomfort, we look at OSHA first aid trends, we look at OSHA recordable trends. These are all things we put within our blueprint for the assess and prioritize area. We look at DART, experience modification ratings, and anything else the company deems important to address. Part of that assess and prioritize is to identify and implement the ergonomic process. So this is the 5-step process we tend to put in place for actually evaluating and implementing ergonomics. We also, as part of that blueprint, identify what the ergonomics process will look like, who's going to do the evaluations, what level of evaluation will be done by who or whom, when will an ergonomic evaluation be done? Is there risk that has to be identified, or are you going to do it proactively based on previous injuries, or are you going to assess the entire company? Where will they be done? Are they going to be done on site, virtually, or video? And then it's also really important as part of this procedure to identify what would trigger an ergonomic evaluation. Excuse me. Another critical component to include in your blueprint under the assess and prioritize component would be to identify root cause. There are many different tools out there. This is an Ishikawa diagram or fishbone diagram that can be used to do a root cause analysis. Identify who will create the final report based on your ergonomic assessment tool, your root cause analysis, and then who will lead the identification of solutions. Also, part of your assess and prioritize may be some kind of table that looks like this to identify your process improvement integration. So under the Plan, Do, Check, Act, for evaluation, we're looking at identifying what is the problem, what's your solution, how will you gain agreement. Those types of aspects can be put into some type of table, but a process or procedure should be identified. Create an implementation process as part of your control component. Identify possible solutions, prioritize solutions, put solutions in place, evaluate the effectiveness, and try new solutions if the initial solutions don't work. These are this is just an example list of the different component parts that could be included as part of that implementation process. Again, here's that chart I talked about, but this is the implementation side of that under the control component. Try your solution. How did the solution work? Can you improve the solution? And then list changes made. So you need some methodology put in place as part of your procedure or as part of your blueprint to really um, put things in front of you and visually manage the process from start to finish. Another control method might be continuous improvement integration. This is an example of an A3 that was used following the Plan, Do, Check, Act. And you can see it's very much a visual tool that gives employees and the company a way to look at what are the goals, what are the evaluation results, the implementation plan, and ergo reduction methods. Now, some companies may not use things like an A3, but you can go back to using a table, a chart, but identify as part of your blueprint a way to document from start to finish what are the goals, what's the outcome, and are you making any changes because of those? Part of your control component should be MSD control hazard prioritization. This is the hierarchy of controls that comes from NIOSH and OSHA. Identify how the company will prioritize and budget um, for those changes. Once controls have been implemented, what will that review process look like? Who's going to be responsible to see if the control measures are working? And what will happen if changes need to be made? Are you putting a process in place where it goes back to the committee, it's reassessed, or is one person going to be responsible for following through? This is another example of what a procedure might look like. We included this, one of the companies I was working with asked us to put it more into um, a step-by-step process. So we looked at what happens at step 4 when we were fixing hazards, identify the solutions, what were the solutions going to look like, um, consider these things when looking at solutions and then implementing the solutions. And within each one of those steps or stages, we were looking at different questions that needed to be posed in order to make a judgment call to move to the next step. Then we're looking at evaluating. Um, Evaluate the effectiveness of solutions and initiatives. I think this is one piece that gets lost quite often in a policy and procedure because many companies have their eye on let's make changes and let's just get in there and fix it. Well, we want to be able to document and evaluate whether our solutions were effective or not. So put a procedure in place to test the outcomes of individual ergonomic solutions. You might do this through pilot studies. You may do this through employee feedback or any other options that you and your team decide to put into your procedure. Evaluate longer term outcomes of the ergonomics program. Are you looking at DART, severity, pre to post ergonomic risk scores by department, area, division? And what was the impact, the long term impact on the experience modification rating? Were KPIs met? Do you need to modify your KPI? And then define how to measure return on investment. Like the money that was budgeted and you used, did it actually have a return on investment? Did it take 3 days to make up that cost of the potential injury, or did it take 3 years? Here's some examples. You can do a return on investment for OSHA first aid, documenting things like, okay, what percentage was work related, not work related? When we're talking about worker well being, you should be assessing each component of your policy and procedures. Another way to look at this would be to look at individual ergonomic interventions. Um, so you can see these were estimated benefits for solution options, and you can see the reduction in claims, the reduction in work comp costs, effectiveness of the solutions, productivity improvements, and then payback periods. And there are Excel spreadsheets out there that you can get that will help you calculate these numbers. And last but not least is to integrate employee feedback and put a policy or procedure into place as part of your blueprint to actually integrate employee feedback. And employee could be anywhere from the worker doing the job to maintenance to purchasing to supervisors to frontline leads. Everyone involved in the process should be able to provide feedback. As part of your procedure, identify what type of feedback you're looking for. Are you going to do it one-on-one, verbally, or in writing, like using a survey tool? When are you going to solicit feedback? Are you going to do it before, during, and after a specific ergonomic project? Are you going to do it ongoing? As part of the ergonomic committee, are you going to garner feedback while they're doing different parts of the ergonomics process? Can you request it from individuals or groups of people? Who sees the feedback? Is the ergonomics committee going to keep it, be the keeper of the information? Are you going to share it with employees and management? Once feedback is received, this is part of every policy I create about employee feedback. You must respond to the feedback or trust is lost. And I've seen this happen over and over again in companies I'm in. I encourage everyone in this type of procedure to say once feedback is received, some type of response must be provided back to the person who gave that feedback. Share the results with employees, post it. I'm huge on visual management. I love to see boards posted with before and after success stories, cost savings, productivity improvements. It can be done via an intranet. Highlight employees that come through with great ideas that have worked. Celebrate those employees' ideas and success. It's also important as part of your procedure or your blueprint is to identify a list of key contacts. Who's all involved in ergonomics so that employees have a way of knowing who's responsible for what aspect. And if they have questions, who can they go to talk to? All right. So we've gone through today really an ergonomics blueprint for success for improving worker well being. Our goal is that by establishing a comprehensive ergonomics program, companies can create safer, more productive, and more satisfying work environments that promote worker well-being. We looked at developing those processes, providing resources, educating workers, assessing ergonomic risk, prioritizing those risks, controlling the ergonomic hazards, eliminating the risks if we can, evaluating the effectiveness of those programs, and integrating employees throughout the process. So I'd like to thank you for joining us today. Let's take a look and see if we have any questions. All right. So some of the questions, is this being recorded? Yes, I believe it is, Dan. And then, is there a way to get my hands on this PDF? I'll let Dan answer that.
One, yes, it's being recorded. Everybody is going to get a copy of this entire talk, along with every other talk that we have within the summit. So if you're able to, if you come in and you have to leave in the middle, you're not going to miss anything. Also, Carrie, if you are willing to share a copy of this as a PDF, we are more than happy to get this out to share with everybody here and everybody, again, who signed up and maybe wasn't able to attend. So that's totally up to you if you're willing to share that.
Sure, we can do that.
Okay.
Are there any other questions?
All right. I'm not sure. Those might be the only two questions. Also, I will throw this out there as well. If at any point in time, you think of a question later, feel free to reach out to me. Again, my contact. Sorry, there's a question. Where's that? Here's a good question from Austin. How do you change the mindset when management is on board, but the workers are not quite there yet?
Sometimes it takes actually doing one piece of the blueprint. So what I might do is ask if I can actively, or the whoever's driving the ergonomics, can you actively participate in like a Kaizen event if they're doing continuous improvement, or pick one aspect that you think you can make the most difference in that would impact those employees that need convincing, and step in, get them involved if you can. And sometimes you'll get buy-in, and sometimes those employees you may have to work around for a little while, and eventually you may convince them. But the reality is, I've been doing this long enough to know that sometimes you don't get everybody on board.
All right. Well, if keep tossing those questions in the chat, and we'll get to them before we wrap up. But again, if you at any point in time have another question, you think about it after, you can reach out to me directly in the contacts. I have my contact information there, and let me know that you specifically, hey, you had a question for Carrie, and we can connect Carrie with you. And again, Carrie, I don't know if you have your contact information. If you want to also toss it in the chat, so that in case anybody has some additional follow-up questions that they think about, if it's like me, it's usually at 2:00 in the morning. I got to write it down. I have a question thought, but if we can toss that there. Either way, the whole point of this is to really just start making connections with people. So again, if at any point in time you want to connect more about anything ergo related, feel free to reach out to Carrie or myself. Or as well as if you feel like you want to reach out and talk more about safety nights, what we do, what we offer the community, which is a free online community for everybody to participate in. Our door is always open at safety nights, so that I just wanted to put that out there. And lastly, before we go, I just want to, Carrie, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today and to share all that. That really was a great blueprint. I learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to really diving into this even further, and look forward to hearing more from you in the future. And lastly, thank you to our sponsor AcuPro for sponsoring this session. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to keep this free for everybody, which is what we like to do here at Safety Nights. Make sure that everything is free and equitable, no matter who you are or where you're from. So thank you to AcuPro for that. Carrie, thank you again. And any last words before we jump off?
No, just thanks for joining us. Ergonomics has been my passion for a long time, and I hope to keep sharing what I can with everyone.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing more. I really could have listened to you go all day. there's a lot of information in there that I think you know we all benefited from today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Um, and coming up today, we have two more sessions. One at 2:30, and one at 4 Eastern. So feel free to join those as well. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at any point in time. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you at the next session at 2:30.
Thank you.
All right, Carrie, that was great. Thank you again. I really do appreciate that time and energy into that. That was I think my favorite tip might have been the making friends with maintenance. That's that's the one that I think goes the distance in all reality. So
Yeah.
um, those are the ones
Yeah.
that the people that can get things done for you. But no, seriously, thank
Yeah.
you again. I really appreciate it. And yeah, same thing I said to everybody else. My door is always open. So we'll be in touch, and I'll give you back the rest of your day.
Sounds good. Thanks for inviting me. Take care of yourself.
You too. Bye, Carrie.
Bye.